Hi, I'm Jeff Kitchen, and welcome to Story Bin, Writer's Room Improv. I'm here with special guests Raoul Mongilardi and Xaque Gruber, and we're going to brainstorm with a story idea. Raoul, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey Jeff, it's great to see you again, and Xaque, as always. I am a writer, producer, director. I've worked for studios and in independent feature film and television. I'm an author, and some of the slate of projects that I've been working on in the past several years, I've done documentaries, but most recently what we're really working on with our producing partners is our big science fiction epic, Next to the Gods. Jeff several years ago helped outline the dramatic points of what that script should look like, and the global script has now grown into quite a phenomenal piece of IP. We're also having a true story that Xaque and I developed years ago under the working title, The Burning Blue, which has subsequently become MIA, which has then been polished by the screenwriter Jim Hanks, and is now represented by Imprint Entertainment, who produced the Twilight franchise and most recently Worth with Michael Keaton and Stanley Tucci for Netflix. So those two projects in particular, in addition to some other horror piece called The Red Casket that I co-wrote with Carolyn Hennessy, and some other pieces, but those are particularly what we have in principal development right now.
Thanks. That's great.
Thank you.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay. So Raoul, that's amazing, all that stuff. I am also a filmmaker and collaborating with Raoul on MIA. I have my first full-length feature film that I'm in the very kind of final stages of post-production now. Hopefully will be out in the world in 2022. It's called Sallywood, and it's a comedy about my life moving from Maine to Hollywood, where I became Sally Kirkland's personal assistant. It's a true story, and Sally Kirkland plays herself in the film. I have a great cast, and I wrote it, I lived it, I directed it, and found the funding for it. So anyway, it's been a labor of love. I've been working on it for a couple of years, but I've also directed some short films. One short film, my first one, actually went to the Cannes Film Festival in 2018. And I am a writer and a teacher and a fine artist, and I exhibit my art in galleries all around the country. And life is good. I'm healthy and happy to be here.
Awesome. It's great to have you guys. So the idea here is that we're going to pick a story out of the hat, pick a story out of the story bin. And these are just story ideas that I've collected, and we're just going to play with them.
It's a wheel within a wheel.
It's going to pick a number for us, and then I'll go to the list and pick that number, and we'll see if you guys want to play with it.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Spin away. Where the story goes, nobody knows.
Okay. A man dreams he committed murder, then begins to suspect it was real.
A man dreams he committed murder, but then suspects that it's real.
That sounds like a Hitchcock trope, actually.
Okay, so yes, it might be a Hitchcock. That idea came from a public domain movie plot from the 20s. If that sounds interesting, we can play with that, or we.
I love it. I love
it. Okay.
I love any sort of murder mystery type deal.
Yeah, why not?
Okay. So it's pretty simple.
Raymond Chandler and Marlene Dietrich kind of in very soft focus kind of. Darling, I did dream it. I did.
I did dream it.
Totally. And it could be in that era. I mean, we can certainly put it in the 40s if you want, whatever works for you guys.
It's so funny because if we put it in the 40s, it's a very different animal than if you put it now,
Right, because there's no cell phones. There's all these things that don't exist then, and only existed then.
Yeah, people communicated differently, and the structure of the film was different too.
Hmm.
And the immediacy of how a plot would unfold, because with cell phones, the most terrible thing about them in pagers is that you have instantaneous, you have no
Yeah.
excuse for tension. Because
Absolutely.
unless you disable or get the cell phone away from either the victim or the protagonist, then the jig is up, because it's like, oh, well, let me just call right here, and then you're done.
Right, and there's videos of everything everywhere these days.
Keep it in the 40s?
Why not? I mean, it's your story, so
we can get the damn cell phones off our back.
Oh,
And
yes.
pagers.
Let me read it one more time here.
Yeah, I just would.
A man dreams he committed murder, then begins to suspect it was real.
It was real. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I want to write it as a woman, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay.
And I think it should be mid-range age-wise too, so that it's not like, because the whole dynamic, if she's over a certain age, I think then becomes like, is this a distant memory thing, which could also be interesting?
Right.
Is it a memory thing that came up from a different past or whatever? Or is it like more in the present? Is she under the influence?
Yeah.
Does she wake up delirious? Is she sick?
Right.
Could her physical condition have some sort of capacity in why she's having this dream, this state of being, And
So keep her around what, 40?
I'm thinking that that's a really good age.
Although women at 40 then were like 64, in looks and temperament. But yeah, so that's fine.
Does she live in a metropolitan region, or is it more rural?
Well, I like keeping it in the city.
In the city, yeah.
Because city life, you
Very
just have
condensed
more
as well.
opportunities.
Yes, there's everything at your fingertips.
So much more stress as well.
And a lot more players in the area, so you have a lot more suspects instead of just the farmer down the road and the mailman who does.
And the rural world of the 40s was rural. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, no, I think that's good. It's a city. It's maybe a noir.
It seems like it, yeah.
Oh, I think so, yeah. It seems like it's ready-made for noir.
Women's careers generally were mostly limited with secretary, nurse, teacher, nun, mother.
There were a lot of major women in publishing and in fashion.
Yeah. So if we set it in New York, you have a lot more range of career possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like the idea of setting it in New York in the 40s. I'm already in the audience.
Right.
So what do you think? She works in the publishing world? Is she an artist? Is she a writer?
Well, do we need to set up?
We need to know, yeah.
Well, do we need to set up an arena where there's a substantial motive for murder, if that seems to be what the case is?
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much, having read enough murder mysteries, anything can be a motive. So, but some things lend themselves more to it because there's bigger stakes and more money involved, or bigger egos. I don't know. I'm sure the publishing world has all that in spades.
Yeah. And then is that going to be part of the...
Oh, absolutely. Whatever world she works in, I was thinking, what if she is a murder writer like an Agatha Christie, or maybe she's the publisher of a popular line of detective murder stories.
That would explain why she's dreaming about it.
That feeds into her dreams. Yeah. Exactly. She could also possibly work at a police station. It would have to be something where it feeds into her dreams somehow, this crime element.
What if she's just a big fan? What if she's just a big innocent fan of culture? This is something that she really has some kind of like almost nerdish connection to in a very quiet way, and suddenly, wham, there's this really, really bad twist in her. You know, it's like in a way like being interested in someone that you really idolize a lot and then finding out something horrible about them.
Well,
Right.
what you're saying reminds me of the movie The Purple Rose of Cairo, where Mia Farrow, it's the Depression, and her only escape from her miserable life and husband is to go to the movies, which
Right.
are like, you know, a nickel to see a movie or something.
Yeah.
And she goes and she drowns herself in these silver screen images that come alive to her and pull her actually
Alive to her.
into the film. It's a beautiful film.
And the previous thing is, if we put her in publishing, then we almost have Basic Instinct. The character of Catherine Trammell is a murder writer.
That's right. That's right. It's been a minute since I've seen that one, so I'm trying.
Right.
I need a refresher.
The other thing is that in New York City, there are a lot of women who are wealthy or
Yes.
wealthy enough to flit around into everything. They know everybody. They go everywhere. They know all the most interesting people. They're free to move.
Society women. Yeah.
Yeah. And who can be real power players as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
it doesn't
also
have to be,
targets.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Targets because they're power players.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
that they are so grand and so feeling above it all, as if they're malignant narcissists,
Mm-hmm.
that they are willing to just do it. Then it could become a twist because she's having the dream. And then at the end, it could be that she's regretting what she did. We could follow the story where she starts out having the dream and we think, oh, this poor woman is being haunted by this terrible dream about this
Mm-hmm.
murder. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, she's being manipulated or whatever. And at the end, we find out she actually did it. And it's guilt that's bringing up the
You know,
dream.
okay, so now I'm getting excited because I think it's funny when you have a character that's so unexpected to be committing murders. So I would write her as a sort of, you know, pearl necklace society woman
Uh-huh.
who seems, who, like you said, is a big fan.
Yeah.
She loves reading her murder books and going to the movies. And maybe her husband is not that interested in any of these things and she's frustrated. But I would want to see her nightmares not just be dreams she has at night, but even in the daytime, she sees things, you know, like things aren't right, or she thinks someone's following her and we don't
cool.
know what's real. You know, I think that could be really interesting.
And that's good
especially in
because
black
she
and
doesn't
white
know
and
what's,
40s.
she's wondering what's real too. Like, did I dream that or did it happen?
Right.
So
there's a peripheral moment, like she could be in a lobby or walking to a charity event and somebody goes by.
Yeah.
And then it could almost be like that wonderful Haley Joel Osment
The Sixth Sense.
where everything gets turned on its head at the end because
right.
we see her going through this and like, oh, well, wait a minute. Was that Sally so-and-so? What do you mean? She's not here. She's thinking she's seeing that. We're thinking she's being followed.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's this guilt trip that's mounting up in her over and over again. That's bubbling up to the top
Mm-hmm.
because her subconscious is reminding her and making her aware that the murder occurred and maybe she actually did it.
Mm. Yeah, I like that.
Actually did it, and it was a suppression of all this time.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's bubbling up. It's bubbling up. Maybe it happened in child. Maybe she's dreaming of this thing that happened that really didn't happen. Maybe it did happen. We don't know.
An idea just popped up to me that, say her husband is in publishing and a little flicker came from Hannibal Lecter, where maybe she kills one of the writers because he's a disaster for the company and the husband doesn't see it. It's like Hannibal killed an orchestra conductor because he was rude, or no, it was because he was ruining this. Yes.
I do think that we could have fun with the string of deaths around her. like at first, maybe her husband she finds him dead in his favorite chair or in bed, and she doesn't even know what happened, like he's dead, and she's distraught, and her friends come over to console her. And then it starts kind of like replaying in her mind through visions in the daytime as well as in her night dreams, like revealing little pieces of information that the audience didn't know about her relationship with her husband. And we start to go, oh, well, maybe he didn't just have a heart attack. So the kind of the murders come to light more into Act 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Act 1, we've set up this lovely socialite lady who lives this nice life with her husband, and we're not quite.
And who we see is not a malignant person.
Yeah.
And who we see is a sort of just a nice kind of bright, but kind of maybe stumbling society lady, not mean, not haughty, not because then everybody will hate it, will love to hate
she has to be likable, frankly, and maybe demure.
And demure. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I love that. The demure one with the very slow eye that actually turn on you when you least expect it.
Yes. Yes.
And so if she did it in the end, is the reveal not only to us, but to her? Is she discovering it in the end that she did all this stuff?
That's a really great question. And because is she through these things that occur in the plot points, is she in denial the whole time? Is she like Kathleen, what's her name? And
Serial Mom?
Serial Mom. Is she like at a point where she's so in denial about it that it's like, that's of course farcical comedy, but is this woman in a capacity that's her demure nature is almost like a spectrum level thing with her, where she just checks out. She just goes somewhere else, and then it's all fine. It's like, well, it almost becomes like Vivian Lee, well, tomorrow is another day, but more of just like a neural click.
And does she become a different person? Is it like a multiple personality?
No, I think it's best if we keep her in one mode and one tone.
I agree.
So when the reveal comes that she's the one who's been murdering, we're all like, what?
What the hell? Yeah.
Yeah, because like, for example, the husband who dies, maybe at the end of Act 1, he has all sorts of shadowy stuff going on in his life. And so fingers are pointed to other characters and other entities of doing him in or murdering him or poisoning him. And she's like a bereft widow trying to process it, but really it was her,
And we could, it could also be really cool that we could figure out by looking in the Rashomon technique that when we revisit very quickly some of the things that we saw regarding him having shadowy behavior, it was because he was suspicious of her. He was looking after her. He hired a private detective. Yeah, I hired a private detective because he actually was trying to figure out what the hell she was doing, and not to stalk her or set her up for failure or trap her into a divorce agreement or whatever, but actually he's been looking at her for a long time, because anybody who knows who's lived with somebody for a long time, you never really know someone completely. And these are society people. These are people of privilege with money. And so they're always
come and go a lot.
They're always somewhere. They're always doing something, darling. So,
well, it would be really funny if the private investigator that her husband hired, and he's like, well, where is she between 4 and 6 every day? And he said, well, she's at the movies. And the investigator says, but it's interesting. All the movies she's seeing are all these super high crime murder movies. I don't know. There can be something in the movies that she's visiting secretly. That's her secret life.
But I think it would be also good to mix it up so that if you say, well, she went to the Paramount to see this musical too,
Oh, right.
But the menace is running through it the whole time because
I like that.
And then it's like, well, so what? She likes to go to all kinds of movies. Well, so do I.
Now, what if the husband has a mistress and the mistress is all sorts of complicated problems? As a secret, as a secret side gig, he has this mistress. So the mistress is, he's like, I don't know, my wife, something is odd. I don't know. And when he dies, the fingers point to this kind of mistress and her shady past. So she starts to look really suspicious, and then that sends the wife into more of like, oh my God, I didn't know about this, and we feel very sorry for the wife.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect.
Maybe the mistress even goes to jail for it,
Oh, yeah, because maybe she's
and then the case is closed.
Lady is like, get off of me! I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything to him. But she's a little bit clumsy and a little bit rude with the detectives and a little bit. Slam the face, or maybe she slaps the police officer who comes to get her, like, Ava Gabor and is like, excuse me, ma'am, you're going for a ride right now. And she goes, and she's just completely livid about the whole thing because she actually hasn't done it. But we're looking at her, the audience is looking at her like, oh, wow, could it be the mistress?
Yeah.
And sometimes the police will show up to investigate crime A, like a domestic disturbance, and find evidence of another crime, and the person gets busted for dealing drugs when they got called for wife beating.
And it could also be cool that when she goes to jail, they come and they talk to the wife, right? And the wife is trying to, of course, keep her in jail because that's where she wants the blame to go. And it's like, well, it says, well, do you have any evidence, Mrs. So-and-so, that this mistress may have killed your husband or whatever? I mean, what makes you suspect that she would go to that? Well, of course, there's all of our money. I suppose that he would not divorce me. And so I think this woman, this person, flipped. I don't know, as she clutches her pearls. Why are you asking me? I've been happily married for 50 years. Why don't you go ask the woman in jail who almost certainly did kill my husband? And then she's like, it's really getting it even more so that then it comes back on this poor woman who's in jail, this mistress who is hot-blooded, who is passionate, who's like,
and troubled.
I knew he was never going to divorce me. Are you sure? Are you sure? Because, we found this letter here where you were saying that you really wanted to marry him at some point. Yeah, but we got all past that. It becomes a real tension bar of what's going on, because then the audience has no idea who did this thing.
Now, I'm just throwing this out there. In the 1940s, I don't know if this was a subject matter that could be possibly approached, but what if he also had a male secret lover? Could that be a 1940s acceptable story subplot, or no?
Well, it was certainly happened, but it was all on the down low, and there was no conversation about it in society.
And the stakes are higher too, because at a certain point it was illegal. And
correct.
A more virulent response from the wife to be more, I'm going to kill him type thing.
Well, he'd be dead already, but yeah. But then we bring in another secret lover to mess it up. I mean, I want this to get as messy as we can get it, to make the wife seem even more innocent.
Then we find out about the boyfriend. We're just like, what? And the boyfriend could just be because in the 1940s, gay culture in New York was extremely, actually extremely active. but extremely quiet. So nobody in society talked about it because nobody cared. Everybody knew it was a very European mindset to have a mistress, to have a male lover, to have a boyfriend, to have a partner. I mean, nobody cared.
I don't know if 1940s films dealt with that subject much.
They did.
So our movie is going to be shot now.
Today.
What do we still need to do to flesh this out
Well,
with the limited time we have left?
right. Two questions come to me. One is, in that marriage, does one of them come with wealth? So there's maybe a money motive. Does she have the money? Does the husband? Is it not a factor?
Well, what a good question.
To me, that becomes a kind of an obvious trope, and it's been done a lot of times.
Yeah.
I like the idea that they're both society people.
I think that's true.
They
Yeah.
both have money. Maybe he has a little more, maybe she has a little more, doesn't matter. And they both have privilege. They both have money. And in those days, it was even more to the point of marrying into your society brand, if you will.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I mean, those were the people you would meet at your debutante cotillion when you were a girl. Those were the people that you would go to the polo club with. Those are the people who you would go sailing with. So where else would you have met anybody else to marry? You wouldn't marry the shop girl because you wouldn't meet her.
Mhm.
And if you did, it'd be while you were buying a present for your wife. And I think that kind of thing would be really cool with the mistress too.
Mhm.
Either maybe the male boyfriend, so that it's not stereotypical, because the one thing, I hate is that every gay guy gets murdered. He's crazy. He's bad. He's got AIDS. He's like this all the time. I mean, I just, no way to instead have, the guy just be like a really quiet person who's got his dignity, who is sort of like, well, I don't know, want to have a coffee later. And it's the husband who's like, yeah, I want to experiment. This will be fun. That it becomes more quiet that way.
And then we learn that the husband and wife are living in two completely different worlds.
Yeah. As so often happens, like not even in the same bedrooms anymore.
Mhm.
The other question that arises is that if this woman really did this murder or these murders, and that could include the mistress, the investigator, the detective who's maybe looking into all this, does there come a point at the end where the delusion breaks through? If she realizes she did it and she's gotten away with it, then does she just kind of go, well, that was good, and just kind of slip back into her delusional state, and she's back off as a merry widow?
I think that's
Even-
exactly it. Yeah.
And then
Yeah, because I frankly don't really want to see her go to prison.
No.
uh,
And I don't really want to see it end where she's hauled off in handcuffs. Yeah, I really like seeing this sort of, unique character who just did all this murder, kind of carry on with her life, and everyone just still perceives her as the grieving widow. And,
Right.
It's not like she's a man-eater.
No.
Well, do
It's not
people
like she's
deserve
now
it?
going to prowl out another man and take him down. It's not like that.
so then that would infer that perhaps all the people that died seriously deserved it.
Yes.
She just happened to be the instrument that was there to
Yes.
fix
And we
it.
and we learn that, of course, at the end. But
Well, also, I like the idea that not everybody deserved to that, but she still gets away with it.
Right.
Because
That
that
makes more
happens.
sense.
That
Yeah.
happens in life. And I think that it's really great if not everybody deserved it. And we don't find out that everybody deserved it. And that there shouldn't be, she shouldn't be 30 or 40 murders or 20. It's just, she's not a monster.
this isn't Friday the 13th.
No. And that there be very specific target things where she has checked out mentally and gone to this place.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the victims could be a really, really, really evil person that she just poisoned or just didn't do anything, because there's also the death by misadventure where you see the horrible person is like, oh, wait a minute, get my pills. And
Right.
you wait just long enough and let them die, because you're not really going to be proactive in saving the life of this horrible person. And then, with that, it's more of like I really just didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
With him, yeah, she did kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, do we start out then with her waking up after a certain period where he's dead, and we see the murder and we see the hands or somehow being involved with his death, and then she's like, I'm having this thing the whole time where somebody killed my husband. She's actually doing a brilliant thing then, because she's calling into question how her husband really died when she has blocked the fact that she did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And therefore, she's throwing everybody off the scent completely by putting the elephant right in the room, because or otherwise, is it just this quiet, nagging, guilt-ridden dream that she's having, and then we just basically see her going off to 21 to have lunch at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And that she's processed it all, and that now there's no one left to bother her anymore,
Mm-hmm.
at least right now.
And maybe she has a female friend who lives either in her building or she knows through the country club, who is even more meek than her. And they have tea together and talk like ladies of society do. And it's all very polite and nice.
Mm-hmm.
And at the final scene, she's with her friend, who's the other meek society lady. And she's like, well, now that Harold's gone, and the case is closed, I'm free for shopping on Tuesday if you want to, her life just continues. I don't want her to be a horrible villain. I want her to be a likable character.
Yeah, she has to be.
Just like,
Yeah.
Are you going to come? Hey, Marilyn or Catherine, are you going to come to our so-and-so next week? And then she could be her final thing while they're having their tea is, I think I might actually open the summer house. It's been a while. I think I'd really like to go out there for a while and maybe just open the summer house.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you and Frank come and visit me?
Mm-hmm.
The other question is, who would you see as the central antagonist in a story like this? Would it be like an investigating detective or someone who suspects something, or?
Well, I think for the audience, the antagonist needs to be the characters that are on the opposite side of this wife. So
The mistress,
the husband who dies, the
mistress, the
boyfriend. Maybe there's a terrible lawyer, involved. There's a terrible building superintendent involved. It could be a number of people who make her life very miserable.
Yeah.
And then little by little, the miserableness is all cleared away. Another big question we haven't tackled is, what does she want? What is it that the wife wants other than just to live her life in peace and happiness? Is she looking to start a business that the husband won't let her start? Is she looking to, purchase something that is beyond her means? I don't know.
I think for her, it's really, it's a really interesting thing that what she wants is she wants stability and peace. And she's willing to do anything in her mind to do it. And the husband is reckless. And she does not like the irony of the thing is she does not like his business recklessness when she's willing to kill people, which is the ultimate reckless behavior. But in her mind, no, because in her mind, it's because her mind checks out, you know, she doesn't see that. And I think that for her to be like that and just like really at a certain point, because they're childless. I think they should be childless couple.
Mm-hmm.
That it's all been about their lives. And now she really can, now she can finally go open the beach house again. It's been so long since I've been to the beach house. And I mean, she's got this, you know, she checks out. This is like she goes to these movies and she's hypnotized and she enters these worlds and she goes into this. And when people, she doesn't care about the rest of the people who she interacts with in a just a sort of a drone-like regular way of doing things or whatever. But the awful neighbor who is very suspicious and who has never liked her and who is always on her. But her brilliance in it, I think, is that when she goes to the detective and she says, you know, I think someone killed my husband. And he's like, oh, right, another society lady's been reading too many books. Yeah, well, what proof do you have? She said, well, I don't really have any proof. But that's how she gets revenge on the mistress. And puts the mistress in the scent of the detective. And the detective's like, well, wait a minute, you know, and then he gets this volatile mistress. And then he finds out about the boyfriend on the side. He's got a girl and a guy on the side. And he's like, well, wait a minute. And then the boy is very quiet and kind of steely and kind of tough. So you wonder, well, did the boyfriend do it? And the girl and the mistress is very like, I don't have time for this nonsense. And I didn't do this with my letters. And I didn't do this in any of this stuff. And it's a brilliant smokescreen on her part. And then the detective just really ends up with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of dying or being murdered or anything, the detective just ultimately just walks away from it because there isn't any substantive proof of foul play. The husband could have died by poisoning. It's not really sure.
Mm-hmm.
He had a heart condition, whatever. He drank a lot. He smoked cigars every night. We don't know. There's no proof that the mistress killed him, and there's no proof that the boyfriend killed him. In fact, the boyfriend is a Broadway dancer, and he was in Chicago when he died, so probably not him. So the whole thing just falls apart. And like most detectives, he just lets it go. It's like, yeah, she came to me because she reads all these books. You know, she's a woman. She doesn't have anything else to do.
Yeah, I'd like to name her a sweet, feminine kind of mid-century name like Bernice or something like that.
Marjorie Whitney Maplewhite, or
Yeah, something like that. Marjorie's a good one. I like that.
Marge, darling. Marge.
You don't hear Marjorie very often anymore.
And she kind of skates through this whole disaster and comes out smelling of roses. And we're also skating through not hitting all the cliche story points that a story like this could afford as well.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We skate all by those. And when people start to smell that that's what's going to go, that's not what happens.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think the husband's world has to be so thorny and Marjorie has to be so sweet. And we don't want to mess with either of those very different worlds.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's marvelous. I mean, Marjorie's whole thing is, you know, she's the kind of lady who looks over her teacup and she's like, it's just shocking what people get up to, isn't it?
Yeah.
One is always surprised. And I must say, disgusted.
Yeah.
And ultimately she doesn't, she's been extremely clever at do this, but I do think that she has to have a tick where when we see her, when she has the dream, right, that prompts this whole thing about like, is somebody going to come after me now? Have I left, am I vulnerable? That we see that she's, got a little prescription. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but like she takes a little pain pill or something. Maybe she just has a migraine. Maybe she, we can just see that, in her physical behavior that, it's getting to her. It's getting to her. But she doesn't freak out. She never goes crazy. She doesn't become a drunk. She doesn't break things.
So then, is she a smooth and sophisticated kind of hobbyist criminal, or is she self-deceptive to the point that she discovers for a few minutes that she did these murders and then blinks out and that's gone again and she's back to
I think
normal?
she's a little of both.
I think she's a little of both, and I don't think I want the audience to know that she's one or the other.
Yeah,
because if she's if the audience thinks of her as a criminal who's out to do criminal things, it really colors it in a certain way where when the movie ends, we have a harsher feeling about her for sure.
Right.
That she's this kind of cold, clinical, well, like Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct,
Right.
So I much prefer her being Marge, the lovely, Connecticut society woman who just is so shocked by all of this stuff happening around her.
But has that steely capacity to check out.
Yeah, as a lot of society women do.
Yeah. Has that, Marge is partly Betty White and partly Christine Baranski. She's a little bit of both,
Uh-huh.
She's very, very smart and she's very, very, not big. I don't think she should be petite, but she's just your 1940s, well-groomed, extremely chic, but not overstated, not flashy lady. Because also those women were always in the fashion level where it was really, really, really understated and classy and elegant.
Mm-hmm.
That was not show business glamour. And behavior, the way they speak, and the way they behave that way, even just their body language, the way they talk, the way they sit, the way they do all of this is and remember that she would have been raised like this since she was a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
She would have been schooled in charm school and etiquette and table manners and which fork to use and how to speak, and all of these things would have been so inbred with her in the same way that her husband Grant or Granville would be the same sort of dashing kind of, firm-voiced, masculine, but very elegant, kind of master of the universe kind of person.
Right.
Because he would have been raised that way too, and raised to think that way, and raised to behave that way, and conquer and be aggressive and dominate, and that the world's his oyster, and and
that you can get away with anything.
Yeah.
And she ends up doing that. She reminds me of an interesting mix of a domesticated animal and a wild animal.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah,
in
like
the same
that.
skin.
Yeah. I see her physically as being like the actress Imelda Staunton. I don't know if you know who that is. She's a British, I think she's a dame, actually. She's a British actress who starred in Vera Drake, which she was nominated for. And she's sort of small in stature and sweet. And I think she was in the Harry Potter movies. She's been in so many things.
Is she the one that played the horrible woman in the pink hat, Dolores Umbridge?
Is that a movie?
In Harry Potter?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That was she.
I like her like that. I also like Emily Blunt.
Well, that's if you want to go much younger. Much
younger.
younger.
In the room.
Well, Emily Blunt was so brilliant in The Girl on the Train.
Yeah.
Which had so many layers to it.
Yes. That's why I
And
like it, is because I think that if you aged her up just a little bit,
yeah.
that also the fashion and the way that she moves and the way that she talks and the way that she uses her body and her voice body and the way that she could be that person, as well as being partially seductive, but also as being very, very proper and very elegant and very
And
feminine
can be dangerous.
and very dangerous.
I think if in the casting you'd want to go as with someone who is as, passive and, victim-y as possible.
And charming too.
And charming. So someone who you would never in a million years think could pull this off.
Right. You want to protect them.
I wouldn't cast, a female who's known for being super strong and tough. I'd want to cast someone who is known for being, playing these passive, sweet roles.
The other person who could do unbelievable stuff with this would be Kate Winslet. She could do a real take on this. That would be almost blindside you. And she's no longer a kid.
Well,
She's hitting that point in her life now where I think that she could bring something to this role that would really be quite spectacular. I think then that the thing that, as I said, regarding the bisexual, the gay character or whoever, that this guy would be unexpectedly like the other way to go, I think, with the gay character. Oh, I just had a thought. Is instead of him being a chorus boy or a young man that he picks up, that it's another guy from like Yale or boarding school, where a lot of guys experimented with each other, and where that is just like it's a non-starter thing, and like he keeps going back to that relationship. And when the cop comes to see him, is like, you've had a relationship with Mr. So-and-so, right? You had an intimate relationship with him, didn't you? And the guy's like, yes, so what? And your point is, and we went to Oxford together, and so what? How dreary of you. Are you
How dreary of you.
Are you so really provincial that you're going to come to me and bother me with this nonsense that my friend and I had a romantic liaison many years ago? Please make an appointment with my secretary next time when you have something important to say. There's a good chap. Goodbye.
And so would Marge plant evidence to frame the mistress?
I think when she goes to the cop and says, well, I think somebody killed my husband. And he said, what proof do you have? Well, I really don't have any proof. It's like, well, how am I? And then I don't think Marge should know about the boyfriend at the time.
That comes to light.
But I think that she discovered the mistress. And so that's why she also rationalizes in her head, well, I want to figure out if somebody's going to catch me. And if, I don't want to be in the beach house someday and have the police show up and drag me away in handcuffs, because then my life will be ruined. So I have to figure out if somebody's going to put it together that I killed Grant, or, and then when she discovers that he had the mistress, then it's perfect, because then she can go waltzing into the precinct and she times it perfectly. It's like, well, but we don't know at the time she's planning all this. We just think she's revealing it, right? Well, I don't have any proof, but I did discover to my dismay that he had a mistress, and I was not aware of that. And perhaps this woman was motivated by some sort of spurious.
There has to be a bunch of red herrings. Oh, yeah.
And then he's like, well, who is this mistress? And she's like, well, I discovered this. Here it is. That's why I came to you. And he's got a lead and a thing. And also she's putting him on that path. We don't know that she's setting up for it. We just think at the time that that's a natural thing for her to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then later we figure out that she did it because she doesn't want to get caught. She wants to make sure that that avenue has been explored. And she's really also playing a risky game because there's always the unknown factor that maybe that could come back to her. But she has to know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why she has the dream. We don't know that at the beginning. But that's why she's having the dream, is because her unconscious mind keeps saying to her, you could get caught for murdering him.
Right. Clean up all the loose ends.
You could get caught. And at the end, we realize that's been her principal motivation in this, has been to do that. Of course, that means that we have to have a scene at some point where we actually see that she has indeed killed him, that she found the right thing to do at the right time, or somehow, or even as vilely as taking, while he's passed out at his office in his den, with his cigar or whatever. She saw it somewhere that if you inject air into somebody, they'll have a heart attack, Maybe it's like that. Maybe she gives him a poison that is almost impossible to trace later on in just enough ways. I don't know what that would be, but how that it would be something that, because of his drinking and his hard roaring lifestyle, makes it easier for him to be vulnerable. Now, of course, she knows that. She lives with him.
Or she substitutes his heart medicine for a placebo.
Yeah, exactly. Something so harmless that it could easily be missed in an autopsy and easily missed. And remember, the fact that we're setting it in the 40s means
there's no DNA, all
no
this
DNA,
stuff.
and their forensic capabilities were almost non-existent.
Way less. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's good that he dies, that Grant dies in his library, that's where it is. Because that's the reason why, if he's at his club and she kills him, well then, how would she get in there? Women aren't allowed, all this kind of nonsense. And if he's somewhere else, then she's got to cover her tracks. But if he just dies in the library of their penthouse, then it also sets it up as to why she is so concerned about, is this going to come back to bite me?
Yes. Murder stories have so many layered elements to them, good ones, that it's such an interesting animal to write and explore.
And they've been done to death so that it's challenging to find a way to do one that we haven't seen 1,000 times.
Yeah, maybe this one is a little different.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to walk around the landmines of cliche and so on.
I think we have.
Yeah.
I think we've
all
done
those
a really
landmines.
lovely job of doing that. I do say so myself. One has to be so careful of landmines.
That's right. Yes, one does.
Okay, well, thank you guys. This was really great.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate the
much,
fun.
Jeff. I appreciate the invite of coming. And Raoul, you've been a great, as usual, writing partner.
Thank you, Zach. Right back at you. I miss you so much, and I can't wait to see your next exhibition.
Yeah, soon, I hope.
This was definitely fun.
Yes, I raised my glass to Marge.
All right. She pulled it off.
She's in March.
And we were
Okay.
rooting for her.